Welcome to Christian Podcast, where we look at the world and our own lives through a Christian lens. Today, we're diving into what is, well, arguably the most disruptive technological force of our generation, artificial intelligence. Specifically, we're tackling a really profound question, kind of framed in our source material, AI and the future of work, from survival to self-realization.
That's right. And our mission today is, a deep dive into the sources with a strong focus on this central, almost revolutionary argument. The idea that AI is doing something much, much bigger than just, increasing corporate profits. Our core research suggests AI is actively liberating humanity from these ancient shackles of survival labor.
Survival labor, that's a heavy term.
It is. And the argument is this isn't just another shift in industry like we've seen before. It's maybe the first genuine opportunity in, thousands of years for us to really redefine work for ourselves, moving beyond just needing to work to live towards maybe self-realization through service and creation.
Okay, and we're going to explore this huge shift through the lens of Christian theology, but also looking at the real-world socioeconomic challenges.
Exactly. We want to provide a framework for understanding not just the tech itself, but critically our response to it. How do we navigate this?
And the need for that framework, it feels incredibly immediate. I mean, you can almost feel the collective anxiety out there. We're hearing these terms like programmer unemployment year one.
Yeah.
Reports are flying about companies restructuring whole divisions, automating customer service, even hitting historically stable fields.
Right. Professions you thought were safe, law, accounting, even parts of medicine, they're all facing this kind of algorithmic restructuring.
So the big kind of existential question is just unavoidable, isn't it? Is AI truly the job killer everyone fears? Or is something else going on here?
Well, the fear is completely understandable. It feels personal. It feels existential. I mean, losing a job today, that often means losing the way you pay your mortgage, feed your family. It's terrifying.
Of course.
But if we follow the argument in our deepest source material, that anxiety might be rooted in a fundamental misunderstanding of what work is supposed to be. That source suggests that technology itself is actually a liberator, forcing us, maybe kicking and screaming, to confront the true purpose of our labor.
Okay, let's unpack that.
Okay.
A liberator, not just a job destroyer. Our sources suggest AI is actually breaking this thousands of years old cycle of labor just for survival. And that's where it gets really interesting, right? Because it shifts the whole conversation from just market efficiency to human purpose. So let's start digging into the historical root of this anxiety. Why is the threat of job loss so deeply terrifying? It's because of that mindset, often unconscious maybe, that labor equals survival, pure and simple.
And historically, that connection is incredibly ancient. It's baked into our culture, even our language. The sources remind us, if you look at the ancient Hebrew words for work, there's this really deep linguistic, cultural connection to concepts like slave or servitude. For millennia, for the vast, vast majority of people, work wasn't really a choice, was it? It was just a ransom you paid to stay alive.
A ransom for survival. That's a powerful way to put it.
And that leads directly to this concept, you might know it from philosophy, called alienated labor. In the modern context, this isn't just about factory workers disconnected from the things they make.
Right.
It's about any professional, really. A lawyer, a coder, a journalist, anyone spending most of their energy on repetitive, almost mechanical intellectual tasks just to pull down a salary. When work is reduced to just a mechanism for survival, it becomes alienated. The worker is detached from the true creative purpose of what they're doing.
And this is where the theological critique, I think, comes in so powerfully. You mentioned Timothy Keller.
Yes. Keller pointed out that modern society often takes work, which should be this vast, creative, contributing activity, and reduces it. Reduces it solely to a means for private gain, or maybe the only source of someone's self-identity.
Trapping us in that cycle, he called. What was it? Bending the knee for 5 measures of rice.
Exactly. Just doing whatever it takes to get by, to get that paycheck. Think about how many modern professionals feel trapped in that cycle right now. They perform busy work, tasks designed not for maximum impact, but just to justify their salary, keep their seat warm. They might spend decades in jobs they actually find miserable because they need that specific income stream for the mortgage, the lifestyle. Their huge human potential gets channeled into just endless repetitive action, which is, by definition, survival labor. The work isn't just alienated from the product, it's alienated from the worker's soul because its main purpose becomes just maintaining a comfortable existence, not really creating or contributing anything meaningful.
That's the nature of the bondage, the cycle. that AI is now starting to break. But how? I mean, how is it doing it physically? It's doing it through this raw, hyper-efficient automation, right? It's changing the actual physics of production. Let's look at the sources here. We have some pretty incredible examples from manufacturing.
Yeah, the efficiency gains are just stunning. They really force us to recalibrate what we thought was humanly possible or necessary. Take Lenovo Electronics and Hefei. They used advanced AI for their complex production scheduling. Now think about that process, analyzing inventories, machine availability, supply chains, staffing. I mean, that used to take 6 hours of intense, high-level human brain power.
6 hours. It's basically a whole day for a specialist focused on just that one task.
Right. Now, using AI, that same process gets done in 1.5 minutes.
1.5 minutes.
Minutes. That's a 99% reduction in the human intellectual labor needed for a core operational task. And this isn't just some marginal improvement, it's simultaneously boosted their output by 19%. So the machine isn't just faster, it's managing complexity way beyond human speed. It's driving down the need for human oversight in those mechanical intellectual steps.
That's technological leverage on a scale that just fundamentally rewrites labor economics, doesn't it? And it's not only speed, it's precision, resource management, which ties back to that idea of stewardship you mentioned.
Absolutely. Look at the Anhui Conk group, the cement example. They used an AI plus cement building materials large model. Okay. Result, a 1% reduction in coking coal consumption. Now, 1% might sound small.
But in that industry, at that scale,
it's huge. Huge environmental and economic savings. Plus, it achieved 90% accuracy identifying over 20 different kinds of risks in their process automatically. And we see similar things at that Medea washing machine factory source. They cut overall energy use by 37.6%, optimized logistics by nearly 30%. These are huge leaps in reducing waste and the need for resource-intensive, repetitive human monitoring.
So the necessity for human labor in these complex yet ultimately repetitive optimization tasks, it's just plummeting. And we're seeing that shift move really fast now from the factory floor to the office tower. The white-collar examples in the sources are, frankly, just as jarring.
Oh, absolutely. Think about professions that were historically defined by tedious data processing or information retrieval. AI can now do a lawyer's basic document review, e-discovery tasks, things that used to take junior paralegals hours, maybe even days of focused work in under 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Or medicine. AI handling initial diagnostic imaging analysis, recognizing patterns, triaging data. These are always seen as complex, high-value tasks that required years of training just to perform the sort of mechanical input accurately.
What's really striking here is the historical parallel the sources draw. They compare this shift directly to the first industrial revolution. That revolution liberated the majority of the population, who were farmers then, from being tied to the land. Labor moved from fields to factories.
And the argument is AI is doing the same thing today, but for white-collar workers. It's freeing them from the mechanical intellectual labor, the spreadsheets, the endless analysis, the document sorting, the stuff that previously defined their survival and justified their paycheck.
We really have to recognize this liberation for what it potentially is. The technical barrier to a future where we need less input for much higher output, a kind of post-scarcity future. That barrier is falling.
It is. We're being liberated from the how of the work, the sheer grinding necessity of the mechanical task. And this forces us, whether we're ready for it or not, to confront the why. Why are we working in the first place?
Okay, so this transition, this potential liberation, leads us straight back to our core theological framework. If work isn't fundamentally about just putting food on the table anymore, we have to rediscover its true, deeper nature. And the Christian concept here is foundational, isn't it? That work is a sacred mission given at creation. It's not a punishment or a curse that came later after the fall.
That is the absolutely essential distinction. The creation mandate, right there in Genesis. God commanded humanity to manage all things, to tend and keep the world. What that means is human work is inherently creative. It's an activity we do in partnership with God. We're participating actively in maintaining, developing, improving the established world order. Work, in its essence, has dignity because it mirrors what the Creator does.
And if we see work that way as management, as creative maintenance, then AI suddenly stops looking like a threat.
And starts looking like an incredibly powerful tool, a tool for fulfilling that very mandate.
How so?
Well, AI is arguably the ultimate tool for management and stewardship. Think about it. When we use AI to optimize resource allocation, like cutting a factory's energy use by nearly 40%, that directly reflects responsible stewardship. That's caring for the created world. We're using a sophisticated tool to better fulfill our mandate to manage creation wisely.
Okay, beyond just management, there's also the question of balance, isn't there? God instituted the Sabbath, that divine rhythm of labor and rest. But for centuries, the relentless pressure of just surviving has pushed back hard against that rhythm. Genuine rest, reflection, it often feels like an impossible luxury.
And AI's ability to minimize those repetitive, draining tasks, it aligns perfectly with this divine design. It really does. It frees up human time, not just for, more consumption or mindless leisure, but for more creative, higher-level management. The tasks that actually require reflection, deep thought, genuine insight. And crucially, it frees up time for genuine rest. The AI-driven reduction of tedious labor is, in a very practical way, giving us back the capacity to truly observe the Sabbath, perhaps for the first time on a mass scale.
Now let's go even deeper into the purpose of work itself. Thomas Aquinas. He offers this really powerful, multi-layered framework for purposes of work, and this moves us way beyond the idea that survival is the be-all and end-all.
Aquinas' framework is absolutely essential, I think, for framing this post-AI era. He argued that work should never be seen as just one thing. It's layered. The 4 levels he detailed show that providing livelihood, basic survival, that's merely the most basic level. If a person's entire identity, all their effort, is consumed just by that one level, they're kind of missing the whole point of their vocation, according to Aquinas.
So walk us through those higher purposes. If technology is now liberating us from that baseline, what are the goals we should be aiming for?
Okay, the goals move firmly into the moral and spiritual realm. The first higher purpose is resisting laziness, staying diligent, active, even when survival is technically secured. The second is restraining the flesh work acts as a discipline, limiting time for potentially destructive idleness or self-indulgence. And the third, which is arguably the most crucial for this discussion, is the practice of widespread charity and good works.
The implication being, if, say, 90% of our mental and physical energy is just spent fighting for survival, charity becomes an afterthought. A footnote.
That's exactly right. It becomes something you maybe do with leftover resources, if you have any, not a central part of your calling. AI's role in taking over those repetitive tasks is precisely what allows humanity, potentially, to transcend that basic level of just making a living. It lets us reclaim the creative, outward-focused essence of work. When the machine handles the necessity, we are finally free to pursue those higher purposes, especially dedicating ourselves to service, to contributing to the common good. We're free to ask, maybe for the first time, what can I contribute that no one is actually paying me to contribute? What needs doing?
So, okay, if AI liberates us from working just for survival, what does this new professional freedom actually look like? Because there's a potential danger here, isn't there? Swapping the bondage of survival for, the bondage of self-achievement. Constant pressure to prove ourselves in a different way.
That's a huge risk, and this is where the Christian perspective provides a fundamental reorientation. It shifts the focus away from internal ego satisfaction, away from just me, and points it firmly towards others and God.
Others and God.
This redirection is the core principle needed for genuine liberation, not just swapping masters. Timothy Keller, again when discussing vocation, really emphasized this. The Christian view centers on serving others rather than serving oneself. He argues the ultimate meaning of work is twofold: to glorify God and benefit people. If we lose sight of benefiting people and just use this newfound freedom from toil to pursue our own interests, our own ease, well, we haven't really gained anything, have we? We've just built some more comfortable cage.
But I want to push back slightly on that word service.
Yeah.
Isn't there a risk that we just replace the constant need to, say, prove our worth through a paycheck with a constant need to prove our worth through acts of service? Haven't we just swapped one kind of output-based identity for another? How is it different?
That's a vital, really critical question. And the difference, I think, lies in the heart. It lies in the sincerity and, crucially, in the source of the command or the motivation. We're taught in Colossians 3:22 to do all things with sincerity and reverence, as for the Lord. That sincerity piece is key. When work is performed as a genuine act of service, rooted in gratitude, rooted in faith, it's inherently free. It's not done primarily to gain personal merit points or to justify your existence. It's done to contribute to the flourishing of others, flowing out of the fact that your existence is already justified by grace. That's the fundamental shift.
Okay, that reframes the goal entirely. So clarify for us then. What's the true meaning of working for yourself in this new post-liberation context? If the goal isn't personal financial gain and it's not self-justification through output, what's the ambition? What are we aiming for?
In this post-liberation scenario, Working for yourself means rejecting the chase for personal ease or purely private gain as the primary driver. Instead, it means being free to serve others according to God's will, free to actually pursue your unique calling, your gifts, and dedicate that output towards contribution. It's the ability to choose work that provides the greatest benefit to the community, the most glory to God. Perhaps regardless of the immediate financial return, because AI is increasingly handling the baseline survival mechanics. It frees up our choice of contribution.
And we can see this playing out immediately in professions that rely heavily on that human connection piece, right? What do those concrete examples look like in the AI era?
Yeah, the most profound changes, I think, happen in what our sources call the temperature boundary professions. Those requiring deep human warmth, insight, empathy. Take doctors. If AI relieves them of the mechanical burdens, initial diagnostic scans, transcription, retrieving patient records, they are freed up. Freed to focus on the really complex critical care decisions, yes, but also on the absolutely essential patient emotional support and comfort. The machine can read the beta points, but only the human doctor can truly sense and comfort a patient's hidden fears and anxieties.
And what about teachers? They spend so much time on repetitive grading, delivering basic instruction.
Exactly. They're liberated to move away from those more mechanistic tasks, to really delve into personalized guidance for each student, into character development. AI might be able to deliver basic facts or grade multiple choice tests, sure, but it cannot instill values. It cannot model character. It cannot offer deep, empathetic support when a student is struggling personally, beyond the academics. The mundane tasks get managed by the tool, the meaning-making, the transfer of wisdom, the shaping of young lives that remains deeply human work.
This leads perfectly into that big question: what is the irreplaceable human value? If AI handles the efficiency, the mechanics, what's left for us? Research seems to identify three core capabilities, things that are really the driving forces of civilization, and importantly rooted in the human imago Dei, that theological concept, the image of God in us. We need to focus on this temperature boundary, the place AI just can't cross.
That's exactly right. The unique value, the premium on human labor, is now concentrating in areas machines simply can't replicate. Why? Because they lack consciousness. They lack true emotional depth. They lack genuine epiphany or insight. The imago Dei. That's what grants humanity these rational, moral, and creative capacities that mirror the Creator. And these capacities are not based on algorithms. There's something deeper.
Okay, so the first of these core competencies is creativity. Specifically, that from 0 to 1 kind of breakthrough creativity. Why is human creativity fundamentally different from, say, the really sophisticated generative AI we're seeing now?
The key difference lies in the mechanism. Human creativity, especially the really groundbreaking kind, often stems from unconsciousness and epiphany. You know, these mysterious flashes of insight that might hit you in the shower or when you're out for a walk. Processes we can't fully model, let alone control. AI, on the other hand, is fundamentally limited. It operates within the range that its algorithms can exhaust.
What does that mean, exhaust the range?
It means AI can be brilliant at optimization. It can analyze 5 million songs and create a new piece that's statistically likely to be popular based on existing patterns. It can solve known mathematical problems incredibly fast. But it cannot fundamentally construct an entirely new theoretical framework. It can't step outside the known data set it was trained on. It couldn't have invented gravity like Newton or relativity like Einstein. Those required a complete conceptual leap, a break from the existing paradigm, that ability to go from 0 to 1 to imagine something truly unprecedented that seems to remain distinctly human.
So even if AI drastically reduces production costs, let's say video production or architectural drafting costs fall by 95%, like the sources suggest, the core value, the actual creative capital, still lies in the design inspiration, the cross-cultural aesthetic expression. That has to originate with human teams. AI becomes the tool, not the muse.
Exactly. AI executes, humans originate. And the second core competency flows directly from this: empathy and emotional connection, what we're calling the temperature boundary. Look, AI can simulate emotions pretty convincingly now. It can analyze your tone of voice, your word choices, and predict your mood with scary accuracy sometimes. But it cannot truly experience joy or sorrow. It cannot genuinely discern the deep, often unspoken needs of the human heart.
Right, genuine comfort, the kind that actually helps someone in an anxious situation. That requires real human sincerity, relational depth. Where does this become most critical in the professional world?
Well, we've touched on healthcare and education already, but think about complex negotiations, social work, leadership, pastoral care. It's everywhere. Deep human need exists. In legal work, maybe the AI pulls up all the relevant case law instantly, but it's the human lawyer who provides the actual counsel, who senses and comforts the client's hidden anxieties during a stressful lawsuit or divorce. In managing teams, sure, AI can track performance metrics, but only a human manager can provide motivation, constructive correction, and genuine support that acknowledges an employee's unique struggles, their family situation, their personal goals. That takes empathy.
And the third irreplaceable value, which you said is closely linked to creativity, is aesthetic ability.
Yes, the ability not just to create, but to perceive, appreciate, and judge beauty. Our sources explicitly list this as a core, irreplaceable skill. It's not just about AI generating a pretty picture, it's about the human capacity to discern quality, to filter, to imbue work with a kind of transcendent value or meaning. It determines the quality of that core design inspiration we talked about, and the effectiveness of cross-cultural aesthetic expression. This ability to know what is beautiful, what resonates, what is meaningful, that makes human output valuable beyond just efficiency.
So if you're listening to this, maybe you're a young person entering this new job market, or maybe you're a seasoned professional trying to figure out how to adapt. How do you actually develop this irreplaceable professional capital? What's the practical advice?
The key is to intentionally cultivate what our sources call composite literacy that AI cannot replace. It means deliberately diving deeper into these uniquely human domains. You use literary cultivation to boost aesthetics, read widely, engage with art, music, develop your taste, your critical judgment. You engage in social practice to refine empathy, spend real time serving vulnerable groups, mentoring others, deliberately honing your relational intelligence, listening skills. And you pursue cross-disciplinary learning to ignite creativity, force connections between fields that don't seem related. Study history alongside coding, or philosophy alongside engineering. These are the areas where human labor will hold the greatest value going forward, and arguably where we best fulfill that creative mandate we talked about earlier.
Okay, so we've established that AI makes the technical conditions for a kind of post-scarcity society seem possible. The efficiency gains are just revolutionary. But technical possibility doesn't automatically translate into societal reality, does it? This whole transformation faces at least two massive roadblocks. It comes down to distribution mechanism and our core value orientation, our choices.
Exactly. The road to true liberation might be paved with incredible technology, but it seems currently blocked by, well, human morality and systemic choices. The technology itself might be a grace, a gift, but the implementation, that's the test for us.
Let's talk about challenge one. Unjust distribution, the big looming wealth divide. The fundamental question is, who actually benefits from all this vast surplus value that AI is generating?
And economists are already sounding the alarm bells here. They're warning that an increasingly large portion of the wealth created is being captured by capital, as AI drives this extreme efficiency, needing exponentially less human input. The profits flowed disproportionately to the owners of the capital, the technology, the algorithms. This kind of automation without a plan for equitable redistribution leads straight towards increased inequality and potentially huge social polarization. We could end up in a future with unbelievable technological abundance side by side with profound social scarcity and unrest.
So the necessary choice for society then isn't really about trying to stop AI's progress that seems impossible anyway. It's about establishing a reasonable benefit distribution mechanism, some kind of system for just allocation.
Absolutely. If we want to achieve the benefits of both scarcity for everyone, not just a tiny elite, we must ensure that this AI-created surplus value gets channeled towards public services and universal development. This means serious policy discussions, things like wealth taxes on automated capital gains, maybe different models of universal basic infrastructure or income support. Our sources really emphasize that this moral choice, this commitment to justice, using the efficiency dividend for shared flourishing is the necessary groundwork. It's what's needed to actually realize the promise of work liberation for humanity. Without that commitment, AI just becomes a tool to make the rich vastly richer and potentially makes everyone else feel obsolete.
Which brings us directly to challenge two. Technical idolatry. Or, put differently, trusting God rather than relying solely on tools. We have to keep reminding ourselves, don't we? AI is just a tool. It's powerful, yes, but morally neutral. Its ultimate value depends entirely on our human choices and where we place our ultimate faith and trust.
Yeah, the source material gives a really strong warning here against elevating wealth or even the technology itself to the status of an idol. We're reminded of that warning in Matthew 6. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth. AI is a profound grace, potentially, a gift that can enhance human capability, enhance our stewardship. But it is not the ultimate path to salvation or security. That's critical. The real danger is investing all our existential hope, our sense of security, in the machine itself, or in the market forces that control the machine.
So when we inevitably face job uncertainty, which seems likely to be a constant feature of life in this era of rapid change, where do we find our actual foundational stability, if not the job or the tech?
Stability, ultimately, shouldn't be sought in a steady position or a specific job title, or even mastery of the latest AI tool. It has to be found in an unshakable faith, in trust in the Creator who is constant, even when technology revolutions shake everything else up. That relationship provides the eternal foundation that no market shift, no new algorithm can ever take away. Now, this reliance on faith doesn't mean passive waiting. It requires active diligence. We're called to be wise stewards, using AI as a tool effectively. As Proverbs reminds us, the hand of the diligent will be made rich. So we have to be diligent, use the tools wisely, but keep our ultimate trust where it truly belongs. Understanding AI as a servant to our higher calling, never as the source of our ultimate security or meaning. Hashtag tag outro at CDI.
Okay, let's try and bring this really profound deep dive all together now. We started with this widespread anxiety, this fear about job loss due to AI. But as we've analyzed the data, especially through this Christian lens provided by our sources, we've realized AI presents this incredible potential. Potential as a spiritual and economic liberator.
Yeah, it seems to offer freedom from those ancient constraints of survival labor just to stay alive, so that we can refocus on the creation mandate, on work defined by our unique, God-given human capacities. Capacities for creativity, for empathy, and maybe most crucially, for service to others.
So the future of work, it seems, isn't really about what specific tasks we do anymore.
It's about why we do them. What's the motivation? What's the goal? The technological path towards liberation seems increasingly clear. AI handles the efficiency, the repetition. But the massive societal test lies entirely in our moral choices, our commitment to justice, and how we decide to allocate the fruits of AI's incredible productivity. Will we choose to use this abundance primarily for private gain, fueling even greater inequality? Or will we choose universal contribution, widespread charity, shared flourishing? That's the fundamental choice, isn't it? That's what will define the AI era for humanity.
And that leaves us with this final, maybe provocative question for you, our listener, to think about. If AI really could take over, say, 90% of your current workflow, the routine, the repetitive stuff, what service or what act of creation aligned with your deepest God-given talents and driven by a genuine love for others? What would you freely pursue with all that time you're given back?
Thank you for listening. See you next time.
Thank you for listening. See you next time.